thing that I can't stand on Twitter this weekend, and it honestly like kind of bothers me a little bit. And I'm not exactly saying something out of turn here because we just were hashing it out. We were just hashing it out, face to face. So I will say the exact same thing now that I just said to him. But like, if you look at what's happened in the NBA finals or the NBA's conference finals, and specifically what has happened with the Heat, right? And you go back to that 97% number that ESPN put out, and you just say analytics suck because ESPN's BPI claimed that the Miami Heat only had a 3% chance to win this series. All you're doing is telling on yourself. All you are doing is saying, I am a person with strong opinions on something that I know nothing about, and that thing is analytics. Because nobody in the entire analytics world would sit there and tell you that the Heat actually had a 3% chance based off of BPI. And use BPI, let me rephrase that to be even clearer. Nobody with an analytics background trying to predict the series would use BPI. It's a stupid metric for that. It's a really useful metric in a lot of other ways. BPI, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, let me rewind. ESPN has an analytic formula, whatever you want to call it, called BPI. It's their Basketball Power Index. And what it does is it takes a bunch of inputs and takes how a team's offense is and how a team's defense is, and it puts them into this formula. And what it does is it ultimately spits out a number that says, this is your offensive skill level, this is your defensive skill level. Based off of that, we combine that into a composite score, and they rank the league. And then they say, based off that, if team 1 plays team 22, the team 1 will win X amount of times. If they play 10, let's say there's a 70% chance that team 1 beats team 22. That means 7 out of 10 times if they played, or 70 out of 100, or 700 out of 1,000, that those two teams match up, that team 1 would beat team 22 in the BPI. I made those numbers up. I don't know what the actual numbers were. I can look up, if we want to, ESPN's numbers for the regular season and where the Heat were and where the Celtics were. The Celtics were very high in the BPI. Based off the regular season, the Heat were not. Because guess what? The Miami Heat, who are awesome right now, they're unconscious, they are so locked in, they are a joy to watch play basketball because they do everything right every time. They make almost no mental mistakes. They are a basketball purist basketball team. They are incredible. What Eric Spoelstra does is mind-numbing. He's going to get Joe Mazzulla fired. It's ridiculous what they're doing. But that's not who they were remotely in the regular season. This is insanity. Playing at this level doesn't happen regularly, and it certainly doesn't happen from a team that showed zero of this during the regular season. They couldn't shoot. They were turning the ball over. Like, they were playing different lineups. Like, they didn't even try to be this team during the regular season. And this is happening because they were forced to do some stuff with Tyler Hero out and stumbled into some stuff that's awesome for them. Different matchups, different lineups. Motivation, I guess, guys like Caleb Martin stepping up. Caleb Martin's been the third best player in the entire series behind Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, ahead of Jason bleeping Tatum. What are we talking about? If I told you that there was going to be a series that Caleb Martin was better than Jason Tatum, you'd probably say 3% was too high. You would tell me that I'm high. What are we talking about? And so if you just take the regular season data, which unfortunately you have to do, right? Could they redo the BPI and take the formula and do it based off of playoff numbers? Sure. And guess what? The Heat would look a lot better. That's not what ESPN did. ESPN was like, based off our regular season BPI, the Heat have a 3% chance of winning this series, which was correct because that is 82 games worth of data. And they have their formula, and they can't change the inputs. They can't be like, hey, look, they shot 20 or 40, 2% in the or they shot 48% during the regular season. We're going to make that 56 in the playoffs because playoff Jimmy or some numbers like that. Like, they can't just change the inputs. It's a formula. It spits out what it spits out. And this is actually an important conversation, not just to rail against people who want to poo-poo analytics because they don't know what they're talking about. But it's an important conversation because it shows you that when people have data in sports, it's not about having the data. It's about knowing what to do with it. Like, this is kind of the Ron Rivera, Carson Wentz thing. This isn't where I thought this rant was going, but here we are, right? Ron Rivera got up in the podium after the Chicago game last year and, like, pounded stuff and was like, analytics. I looked at the analytics and it told me that Carson Wentz, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, man, all you're doing is saying that you shouldn't look at analytics because you clearly don't understand the data. Because there's no one that understands the data that would look at what Carson Wentz did last year in Indianapolis and go, let's trade a couple of draft picks and pay that guy $28 million. You're telling on yourself. And I just wish we didn't do this. We didn't do the hot takey analytics or Bobo thing. And like, look, Matt Ryan did it. And I think Matt Ryan, in our interview on Take Command last week, he's like, I've been telling people for 15 years that analytics stink. Did we win or lose? And I'm like, well, I didn't really want to get in a fight with Matt Ryan on the first time I ever talked to him. And it wasn't really the point of the interview. But I might circle back to that with Matt Ryan at some point. All analytics are is advanced statistics. We've had stats forever. We've had batting average and RBI and home runs in baseball. We look them up every morning in the newspaper from kids that were born in 1926 to, let's say, 1996. And then the kids after that probably don't know what I'm talking about because you have this crazy thing called the internet. And so you went to ESPN.com or Baseball Reference or whatever and looked them up. Same thing, right? But now, instead of looking up batting average and home runs and RBI, you might look up WAR. You might look up an advanced statistic. And it's harder to trust because you might not understand how it's calculated versus like batting average. Okay, he's at bat 100 times or 1,000 times. He got on base, or I guess not on base because that'd be on base percentage. He got hits 300 times. He's hitting 300. Okay, got it. But what if we told you that it was actually more valuable to figure out how far often he's on base? Okay, now add in the walks, on base percentage. Ooh! First person to do that was doing analytics. But now you have people who spend millions of dollars, these organizations and outside consulting companies that spend millions of dollars to take large swaths of data and try to make sense of it. But the point is, you have to actually use it in the ways that it's intended. So for ESPN, BPI, for the people that are trying to actually use it properly, is a metric to kind of tell us, hey, going into the playoffs, this is how these teams have played so far. It can't guarantee that any kind of outcome. It can't guarantee that if a team hits a hot streak or changes or, they change their roster. Like when a team makes a massive trade, like the Nets' BPI didn't change when they traded Kevin Durant because it's not how that works. It's like, hey, this is who the Nets are. The uniform that said Nets is this. And they drop off and, you go from there. So, and actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't know how BPI is calculated. It might, because it might take players, you're starting fives, PER, times their minutes divided by, I don't know exactly how it's calculated. All I know is that it's a regular season statistic. And what the Heat have done, and if you want to use BPI correctly, what that tells you is what the Heat have done is remarkable. And that's how that should be used. Is that, yes, if a team who plays like the Miami Heat during the played like the Miami Heat during the regular season faces a team that played like the Boston Celtics during the regular season in a 7-game series, there is almost no shot that they would win. 3% chance. Honestly, that sounds high because none of you, all of you that hate analytics, all of you that think I'm just a big old giant nerd and should shut up about this, none of you would have picked the Celtics or the Heat if these two teams matched up in the first round this series or this season. Now, a couple of playoff wins by the Heat into it, things change. But don't pretend like 3 out of 100 is some crazy number considering who these teams were during the regular season. What that data tells us is not that the number is stupid, not that the data is stupid. It's what the Heat is doing is unprecedented and remarkable. So instead of being mad about the numbers and being mad at data, just enjoy the bleeping basketball. That is not where I thought I'd start today, but I feel a lot better having done it. When we get back, what's next for the NBA? Both conference finals, 3-0, so a massive potential offseason awaits. Highlight some of the biggest moves to be made next at the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.